Hi, Married Life here at Holy Mustard. I'm Krystal. This is Howard Hoon, and we are continuing on talking about money. Want to continue on with the illustration we've set up in the previous videos. We had this grand spread at this wonderful party with the waiters walking around with food on the trays, and some of the party guests decided to hoard the food and take the food. Well, let's go one step further today. And some of these party guests decide to go into the kitchen and start taking food out of the pantry and the cupboards and making their own food. And it's a silly illustration. You'd never do that at a party. You would never go in to your host's kitchen and start to prepare food. But that's what we do with God. God is the grand host of this party, and He has provided us an abundance. And then we decide, no, I don't want that food. I'm going to go and prepare my own food. But the problem is you're preparing it with food that belongs to God because everything is His, even though you think it's yours and it's self-made. We forget that God's the host of the party. God's the host of our lives. We try and do it ourselves. We want to do our own blessings. We want to be self-made because that gives us a name. It makes us feel like we can do it ourselves. But what we forget is that God and God alone is the source of our blessings.
And how freeing it is to think that God is providing for us. That we don't need to go into God's kitchen and make it for ourselves. That God provides for us. I think sometimes we get lost in the idea, particularly in our marriages, that our struggles with money are just ours. That we have to find our way out, that we have to pull ourselves up by our bootstraps, so to speak, and make our own way. That doesn't mean that we may not need to change our expenses. That may not mean that we need to budget and work on how we handle what God has provided for us. But we can also seek God in the middle of all of this, in the middle of struggles, in the middle of blessing, and realize that it's God that's provided for us. You know, a few years ago, I was at a Cub Scout thing, working with some boys on some project. I don't remember what it was, maybe a birdhouse or something. And I remember there was a number of us dads that were helping these boys build these little birdhouses. I think it was for a Mother's Day project. And so at the end of the day, some of the mothers came to pick the boys up. And I remember this one boy in particular ran up to his mom and says, "Look what I made all by myself." Now, everyone there knew he didn't make it all by himself. But that's oftentimes our attitude. That our attitude towards God is that we take all our gifts, all of our talents, all of our energy, we go and invest it in something, we get money back, and we say, "Look what I did. Look what I made. Look what's mine." When in reality, it's all God's. And since we can trust that God provides for us, we can trust that God is the one that's going to continue to provide for us and give us what we need. You know, in Genesis, there's a story of the Tower of Babel. It's in Genesis 11, verses 3 through 4, right there at the beginning of Genesis chapter 11. And it's a story of a group of people that gathered together and they built this large city and they want to build this tower to God. And they want, in their words, they said they want to make a name for themselves. Well, God destroys the tower. He spreads them out. And then just a chapter later in Genesis 12, God calls a man named Abram, one who he would later rename as Abraham, calls him out of his homeland to go someplace that's unknown. To leave all of his family, leave all of his friends, to go to a place that God would later tell him to where he would go. And he said that God would make a name for Abraham. And that's really at the heart of what we're talking about here. Do we believe that God is going to make a name for us? Or do we believe that it's our duty to make a name for ourselves? Do we think that God will provide us what we need? Or do we think we need to go into God's kitchen, root through His pantries, get into His refrigerator, and make it for ourselves? Do we think that God is a God that is going to give us what we need? Or do we feel like we need to get our own? Do we feel like we need to make our own name, or do we trust that God is the God that's going to make us into who He created us to be?
And that's what we hope that you will discuss with your spouse this week. What will it take for you as in your marriage to truly stop doing it yourself? I mean, there's such freedom there, stop thinking it all has to be on you, whether it's financial issues or other circumstances or situations in your marriage, that God is there and He wants to be the source of the blessing. And do we trust Him in our marriages to provide that blessing? Thanks for joining us at Married Life at Holy Mustard, where we want you to experience real faith in real life. Till next time.
Hey, thanks for watching us here at Holy Mustard. We make videos about real faith and real life. If you don't want to miss any of our videos, make sure to subscribe to us on YouTube at Holy Mustard and get the latest and greatest. Thanks a lot.